Hey guys, here's part three. So picking up where I left off, if you use disaster relief funds, so say you ran a scheme to get people to donate to a coronavirus relief fund, and you channeled those funds into your personal bank account, there will be special punishment for you. So the violator may be fined up to $1 million, imprisoned for up to 30 years, or both. So you don't want to do that either. Don't do that. Bribery is the next one. So this is kind of interesting. This is offering to give someone or give something of value to a person in an attempt to influence that person to act in a way that serves a private interest. There are three different types. So there's bribery of a public official, there's commercial bribery, and bribery of foreign officials. I think you can kind of all sort through those in your head without too much explanation. But in this case, there has to be intent, and it has to be both present and proven. This is kind of an interesting detail that the crime occurs when the bribe is offered, and it's not a requirement that it is accepted. So if you offer someone something, say, hey, I want to offer you some money to give me to vote in a certain way, the bribe has already occurred. So the person that offers it is already guilty of bribery, even if the other person does not accept it. Accepting a bribe is a completely separate crime. The example on page 149, Kent Peterson works at the firm of Jacoby and Myers. He offers to pay Laurel, an employee in a competing firm, to give him that firm's trade secrets and pricing schedules. Peterson has committed commercial bribery. So-called kickbacks or payoffs for special favors or services are forms of commercial bribery as well. There's a YouTube video link you can look at there as well if you'd care to. Bankruptcy fraud. So we saw, I think I may have talked about this when we were talking about Judy. And by the way, I've not stopped looking for the video we were trying to find to finish. But bankruptcy fraud, this happened in Judge Judy in an episode one time where someone was declaring bankruptcy. And when they declared bankruptcy, they wanted to protect their assets so they didn't lose them all, because in a bankruptcy setting, they liquidate your assets in order to cover your debts. And this person didn't want to lose their assets, so they gifted them to their daughter. Then after the bankruptcy was over, the lady said, hey, I want my stuff back. And the daughter said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you your stuff back. You gave it to me. The mother went to court to sue her for her property back. And we talked about this like the first week or two of class. You have to come to court with clean hands in order for the court to protect you. And in this case, obviously, she was only in this mess because she had asked her daughter to commit a crime, or she had committed a crime by hiding assets. So bankruptcy fraud, that is one version. Also, a creditor can file a false claim against the debtor, and you can also conceal property. That's one of those examples. Insider trading is another example of a white-collar crime. In the individual who obtains inside information about the plans of publicly listed companies. That should say companies. I don't know why I didn't put the last word on there. It's a violation of securities laws, so it's a really bad thing. They are actually, some people are, so when the coronavirus task force, I guess, was developed, a bunch of the elected officials who were on that board and had that inside information about how bad this could be went and sold a bunch of their stocks. And so they were able to avoid losses in some ways, lots of losses, and invested in things they might not have otherwise invested in and things like that. And there is lawmakers they're trying to figure out whether they can charge them with insider trading because they did have information. Now, the difference is they're not members of a corporation, but they did have inside information that the public did not have. So insider trading is really difficult to prove. If if you remember back, Martha Stewart, this has been a long time ago, you guys were babies, but Martha Stewart went to prison for insider trading. Okay, so the next to last, is theft of trade secrets and other intellectual property. We talked about this in the example from the other chapter. Trade secrets, so for example, the recipe for the Krabby Patty secret formula, or Coca-Cola is the example I have on this slide. They're really valuable because obviously if someone has the trade secret, then they can, or the secret formula, then they can knock it off and make their own. The Economic Espionage Act makes theft of trade secrets a federal crime, and it's also a federal crime to buy or possess another person's trade secrets. And it's a big deal, and it's punishable by 10 years in prison and up to $500,000 in fine. $500,000 in fine. If you are a corporation, the fine is up to $5 million. And you also have to forfeit any property that you gained as a result of or used to acquire the violation. So say you used your computer servers to commit this crime, you will have to forfeit those computer servers. You will have to give those up and you'll have to replace them on your own. The last type of crime, of white collar. Okay, organized crime. Organized crime operates illegally. They provide illegal goods and services and other types of things. So providing weapons, providing gambling, prostitution, narcotics, loan sharks are often associated with organized crime. And if you guys are familiar, remember loan sharks, there's an example over here. The good news is I got a loan. They charge huge interest rates, and you're really never done paying them back. And typically they will, they can take your life or, end up at the bottom of the river with concrete shoes or something. But anyway, organized crime, a couple examples of that are money laundering and racketeering. Money laundering is a funny term to me, but if you want a kind of a way to there's a YouTube video here that kind of gives a little bit more explanation, but I think money laundering is kind of an interesting thing. It's a way that you create a business and you route the money from your illegal activities through that business so that it looks like your money is coming from somewhere that's legit. So billions of dollars per year are laundered for organized crime. There's a great video we were going to watch, and I may post the link to it, and it's about a guy who was a mob boss, and they made their money by running gas stations, but clearly gas stations weren't their main business. Very, very interesting, and he lived to tell about it, which is even more shocking. So when you deposit money in the bank, or you take money out of the bank in a transaction that's greater than $10,000, the bank has to report it to the government. And so typically there's a hold on those funds until the government has been notified of that. So in order to kind of hide that, so if I was selling weapons to someone out of my garage, it would look really suspicious if I had these huge deposits that I was just putting in the bank. So you have to, you would have to report if I was trying to be covert about it and trying to launder that money so that it would not raise the federal government's eyes or their eyebrows. I might start another business, and all of a sudden my business is really profitable. So a lot of times dry cleaning businesses in big cities, things like that, are typical fronts for money laundering. The example your book gives, Leo Harris, a successful drug dealer, becomes a partner with a restaurateur. Little by little, the restaurant shows increasing profits. Shocking. As a partner in the restaurant, Harris is able to report the profits of the restaurant as legitimate income on which he pays taxes, federal and state. He can then spend those funds without worrying that his lifestyle may exceed the level possible with his reported income. So it's just a way of hiding those assets and the source of those. Racketeering is another one, and racketeering is kind of there's a lot we could get into. We're not going to spend a ton of time talking about racketeering, but it makes it a federal crime to do any of the 4 things that are listed here. So use income obtained from racketeering to purchase any interest in an enterprise, acquire or maintain an interest in an enterprise through racketeering activity, conduct or participate in the affairs of an enterprise through racketeering activity, or conspire to do any of those things. So it's the bill that was passed the act is called RICO. And so it's kind of, let me grab a definition of what racketeering is. Okay, I looked up the definition of racketeering. It basically means to commit a racket or conspire to. Racket just means anything you're trying to do dishonestly to get money or goods from someone. So it really doesn't provide a lot of information there, but it's a part of organized crime. So a little bit more information about RICO. It incorporates by reference 26 types of federal crimes and 9 types of state felonies. And so if you commit 2 of those offenses, you can't get in trouble for just committing 1. But if you commit 2 of them, you're guilty of racketeering activity. The violation is $25,000 per violation and imprisonment for up to 20 years. You can also have what's called government forfeiture, which has a little bit more information for you on page 150. Any assets, property, or cash that were acquired as the result of illegal activity or involved in or an instrumentality of, which means in the use of getting this illegal assets, are subject to government forfeiture. So you can have to give up your assets or your property to the government, which would be bad. There's also civil liability that's associated or can be associated with RICO. So the government can seek civil penalties as well as just criminal. So they can require you to divest your interest, so sell off your interest in whatever your business is. They can require the business to dissolve completely if it was all for fraudulent means. Private individuals can actually sue the violators and recover up to 3 times their actual losses plus penalties as far as fees go. So that's kind of nice. I'm not sure a ton of people would probably take anybody up on that, just because the kind of people you're going to be dealing with might not be the kinds that you want to get any further involved with. There's a couple of defenses to criminal liability. So you can say, hey, I'm not responsible for this bad action because of these things. You can also say, I didn't have the appropriate mental state. So think back about Justin Thurber and the murder of Jody Sanderholm. I don't remember if I think we talked about it, but if you don't know about it, you can Google it. It happened here in Cali County. So you can say, hey, I shouldn't be responsible for my actions because they were justified, because there was, and we'll talk about self-defense as one of those things, or any normal person would have done the same thing under those circumstances. So it can also, you can also remove your liability if you can say, hey, I didn't have the mental capacity to make this decision and know it was wrong. And so there's lots of reasons, but one of those examples is out of insanity. I might say, hey, I'm not capable of understanding that this is wrong or would result in this consequence. You can also have procedural violations, and we talked a little bit about some of these in regards to the Kansas Supreme Court cases, but the procedural violations, so they didn't properly serve you, they didn't file in the appropriate court. There's lots of other things you could claim. So we'll go through these in the next video, but justifiable use of force is one, necessity, insanity, mistake, duress, entrapment, a statute of limitations, or immunity. See you on the next one.